Yeah, how do I select my artists? Well, it's different for everybody, but the important I think the important point that every collector has in common with every other collector is that when he or she sees a work of art which speaks to him or her, that's because there's a vibration which is shared between the person and the artwork. And this vibration is very important because it's energy. It's live energy. It's energy which the artist with his vision put into that work. And that energy, it never is destroyed. Energy is always transmuted into another form of energy. And this is why, for example, great works of art never lose value, because they're always transmitting their energy and the vision of the artist that made them, from generation to generation. And so that, it's difficult for me to say, well, it's this or that artist. I prefer to see the work, because it's going to be the work that's going to speak to me, not the artist. The artist, he put his effort into the work, and now the work is his messenger. And either there's going to be a message that is sent and received, or not. That's the way it is. I mean, everybody has it's a totally personal sensation. Collecting is totally personal. The other thing that's interesting about collecting, in terms of the works, is that works of art speak to each other. They communicate with each other. This is why, for example, here we've got, behind me, we've got a Ghass besides a Pollock. And the reason that they're together is that they communicate with each other. And this is what everybody really likes to see whenever they go to see an exhibit in a museum. Or even better, if you can go see an exhibit of a collector. Because that's the most interesting, is how this collector in his vision, because he's now acquired something that's the vision of an artist that was speaking to him. And now, what has he done with it in terms of disposing and exposing it and exhibiting it in his own collection? What other pieces of art is he accumulating around this piece of art? And what type of message is being made there? And so that's even more interesting than the initial vibration. But for that reason, what I say is that the way you collect is really emotions. It's not always that way, because there's obviously a budget. Everyone has to start somewhere, and normally you start with a budget, and so basically you can afford what you can afford. With time, your tastes evolve, and at a certain point in time, you're able then, to afford, what you desire. And so today I can say, yes, I would know the artists today that I appreciate, because I know in general what their style is and what they do, but it's going to be each piece of work individually that's going to be yay or nay. I like it or I don't like it. It sends me an emotion or it doesn't. So it's a difficult question, but it's actually a quintessential question, because when you look at any great collection of art that was made by somebody, you can ask yourself, what's the message, behind this collection, and there will be a message. Everywhere there will be a message. And so, yes, I mean, it's difficult, but it's linked with the moment. It's linked with living in the present. Why collect Ghass, who's a contemporary artist, as opposed to most of the other artworks here represented who are dead? Well, the answer is relatively simple, because, as I said before, each piece of art has a message that is incorporated and is part of its being, and was put into it by the artist with his personal vision. And these messages are immutable, and they transcend ages. I mentioned before that that as a young child, age 5, I really liked Botticelli and I liked Kokoschka, two artists completely different. 20th century German expressionist and 14th, 15th century Italian Renaissance. Why? Because their works spoke to me at that time, and they said something, and they still do, and they've been saying it ever since these people were dead. I think that a better response on my part to your question would be not necessarily whether an artist is alive or not, but what his work is saying today to me when I look at it. And there, I'm quite happy that Ghass is alive, because if I have a question about a piece of work that he's done, I just ask him and he can tell me what his vision was, what he intended to do, what he was doing at that time, and that's much more interesting than listening to, you know, a text after he's dead by an art historian saying, well, Ghass, he intended to say this and this and this by that, and this stroke and this color and that, and this texture and this era of his work, this represented that. Well, I prefer to hear it from him, because then I know that's true, because it's his personal feeling that he put into the work of art. And unfortunately, you cannot have that dialogue with these artists who are dead. So from that point of view, I don't care whether it's contemporary art or modern art or anything like that. It's the art that has to speak. It's the vibration. It's the vibrational message which is important. And so if I can add to that vibrational message, you know, the artist who is there, who can say, well, yes, when I did this, this is a bonus. This is a bonus. No, it's not necessary for an artist to be dead to be considered as a great artist, because any artist will be measured by his message, you know, that's incorporated in his art. It's integral. It's something that you cannot split it. I mean, every artist has a message. Every artist is trying to send a message. When I had two parents in the performing arts, theater and music, and that left me basically alone in art, where I didn't have any competition from my parents. But only at age 40, I decided to take, you know, a course in academic drawing, you know, nude models. And at that point, I learned that, you know, actually I was ambidextrous in terms of drawing. Never knew that. Never knew I could draw with the left hand and with the right hand. I'm right-handed. But what was the most amazing thing was to see the way that the brain works in terms of the message it sends through the hand. The left side of the brain, you know, is very rigorous and natural, and the right side of the brain, in other words, the left hand, is very spatial oriented. And so what I discovered during this course is that I could draw the same model with the right hand and left hand. It was like two different models, but it's the same person. Well, I continued that after this year of academic drawing with another teacher, master, Jean-Pierre Huzer, who Swiss-French, lived 35 years in Paris. He was a protege of Serge Gainsbourg. And he taught me the art of portraiture. And I love portraiture because, you know, a portrait, a face is like a landscape. A face is like a landscape. So I love portrait, and so I continued with the right hand, left hand dichotomy. It's very interesting, and it sends a message. You know, it sends a message. Well, Ghass, in all of his work, he has a message incorporated. And you know, he says to himself, if he didn't have his artwork there as his message, you know, he might just, you know, shoot himself in the head, you know, because he'd explode. And that is the dilemma and the saving grace of every artist. Namely, he has to fight within himself in terms of his own personal message. It has to get out, and it gets out through his art. And so for Ghass, you know, he has a great message, you know, and it comes through in his art. And for those who can receive it, because not every, as I said, you know, 99% of the people are not going to be in agreement with this message. But for those who do receive it, they actually communicate with the message that he incorporated in the work of art. You know, it's that message which is sent, which is transmuted. So it's a wonderful experience. So no, you definitely don't have to be dead, but even a dead artist, that message is still going to communicate because it's in the art, it's in the artwork. All right. What's the primary motivation for purchasing art? Is there a financial interest, or is it actually, you know, the personal message? Well, I mean, the short answer is that it's the personal message, because I believe in emotion, the power of emotion, because emotion is actually the medium of transmission of the artist's personal message. It's clear that throughout history there has always been a financial interest in terms of collecting art because of status, also because normally, as I've said before, 99% of the people who view an artist's work usually are not in agreement with his message, and therefore, you know, it's relatively rare that the contemporary artist meets with all of the success that he had hoped. Well, I'm not even certain that the artist is concerned with that, but it's relatively rare that during his lifetime the artist meets with all of this success that we know that certain artists like Picasso have met with. But even Picasso, when he was young, and in the 1920s, when he was unknown in Paris, you know, he had to scrape by to make a living, and yet he was burning, you know, with desire in terms of what he wanted to produce. There were a couple of art dealers who saw that message, but they didn't make any money with him. But they saw the message and said, oh, this message, this could be a great message. And that's why they supported him. Yeah? So, you know, in the end, it's the message that counts, and that means emotion. Financial aspects will come into play later because precisely once the artist is dead, you know, there will be an interpretation, and then people will look at the message to see what the art, you know, whether this artwork represented what message was it, you know, et cetera, and then you will have this element of financial interest that mounts, and so but in reality it's what the artist express via his artwork which is important, and that is fortunately not only a phenomenon of his lifetime, but it's perennial. It's perennial. It exists throughout the ages. So